is scandals become these catchwords: Watergate, Katrina, Chappaquiddick, Benghazi. And of course, people forget what they were, what they actually were, because not only do we not follow every step of the news, but once a scandal gets started, people start throwing stuff at the wall to see if it sticks, and it gets very confusing. So I would like to go back for the next couple of minutes, and we'll bring on Michael Knowles after the break. If you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you'll have to come over to thedailywire.com and listen to the rest. If you subscribe for a lousy $10 a month, you could just watch the whole thing on the Daily Wire and get that, drink in the Knowles-ishness of Knowles right there without having to turn it. Plus, if you subscribe for a year for 100 lousy bucks, you get the Leftist Tears mug, which, as I proceed, is going to fill up magically with leftist tears. Because I want to go back and look at Benghazi just so you know why this was a big fuss. If you remember, if you go back, Jon Stewart was making fun of Fox News during Benghazi for trying to make it a big deal. The New York Times was reliably reporting the lies of the Obama administration while Fox News was breaking the actual story. Why is this a scandal? And it's not what you think, because a lot of the things that were sensational, that they didn't send help and all this stuff, some of this stuff was, yeah, there were right-wing talking points, but there's a reason this is a big deal, okay? And let's compare that to what happened in Niger, which is 4 soldiers got killed. The Arab Spring, you remember the Arab Spring, when suddenly because of what Bush did in Iraq, suddenly all these people were saying, hey, maybe we should be free. And Barack Obama mishandled this from beginning to end. But the most important place he mishandled it was in Libya, okay? I'm going to read this from the New York Times, because what the New York Times always does is they always eventually get the truth. They always eventually write these stories, but they do it when it doesn't matter anymore, and they sometimes bury it. They put it in their magazine or something. In the throes of the Arab Spring, Colonel Muammar el-Gaddafi was facing a furious revolt by Libyans determined to end his quixotic 42-year rule. And let me stop here for a minute and say that Gaddafi was a terrible guy. He was a dictator. He was a terrorist, supported terrorism. But when Bush scared him so badly when he went into Iraq that he gave up his weapons program, his weapons of mass destruction, and he became a sort of ally, one of those guys who's not as bad as he used to be. So he became sort of our pet crazy man. All right. So the dictator's forces were approaching Benghazi, the crucible of the rebellion, and threatening a bloodbath. France and Britain were urging the United States to join them in a military campaign to halt Colonel Gaddafi's troops. And now the Arab League, too, was calling for action, but President Obama didn't want to go. He was deeply wary of another military venture in a Muslim country. Most of his senior advisors were telling him to stay out, but he sent Mrs. Clinton to listen to a guy named Jibril, the leader of the Libyan opposition, and she was won over. Mrs. Clinton was won over, and she said, the opposition leader said all the right things about supporting democracy and inclusivity and building Libyan institutions and all this stuff, and she came back and she convinced Obama, okay? Mr. Obama's defense secretary, Robert M. Gates, would later say that in a 51-49 decision, it was Mrs. Clinton's support that put the ambivalent president over the line. So Secretary of State Hillary Clinton sold to Obama that we should bomb the Gaddafi's forces and help him to get overthrown, okay? The consequences would be far more far-reaching than anyone imagined. Well, let's say, so he was overthrown and he was killed. And remember, Hillary, in this famous clip, it's only a couple of seconds, this is cut number 7, bragged about her role in getting rid of Gaddafi. Okay, we saw he died, okay, ha, 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 ha. Unfortunately, things didn't go as she must have told the president they were going to go. After all the talk about democracy and everything was going to be great, Libya became a failed state. It descended into absolute chaos. Terrorists came rushing in, ISIS came rushing in, and all of the weapons that Gaddafi had stored went out into the world, including to Niger. So they were helping all those neighboring countries. They were helping the terrorists in all those neighboring countries. Obama later admitted to Chris Wallace that this was the worst mistake of his administration.
Worst mistake?
Probably failing to plan for the day after what I think was the right thing to do in intervening in Libya.
Okay, so remember this, right? Hillary Clinton goes in and she says, let's do this. Obama does it. And then Libya goes down the drain and becomes part of this failed area now. Because remember, Obama also pulled out of Iraq too soon and let ISIS thrive there. I mean, Obama blew this. He blew the Arab Spring. There's just no question about it. And you can say, well, Bush shouldn't have gone in there in the first place. Fine. But Bush was gone and Obama was in. All right. Things get worse and worse in Libya. Right? The terrorism is building. And our ambassador, Chris Stevens, is, have I got his name right? I want to make sure I don't, is repeatedly calling, this ambassador, Chris Stevens, is repeatedly calling for more security for our outposts, especially in Benghazi. Later, after this was all over, CBS would report that they had the documents that showed time and time again he was calling for reinforcements. So that's the CBS coverage, which is 12.
Ambassador Stevens personally pressed for strengthened security in a series of cables to State Department headquarters in Washington. On July 9, 2012, Stevens sent a request for extension of temporary duty personnel. That refers to a 16-man military temporary security team with expertise in counterterrorism. They were set to leave in August, but Stevens asked to keep them through mid-September. On August 2nd, 6 weeks before he died, Stevens requested protective detail bodyguard positions, saying the added guards will fill the vacuum of security personnel currently at post who will be leaving within the next month and will not be replaced. He called the security condition in Libya unpredictable, volatile, and violent. It's not known what happened to that request. On August 8th, as the special security teams left Libya, another cable from Stevens says a series of violent incidents has dominated the political landscape and calls them targeted and discriminate attacks. Then, on September 11th, the day the ambassador lost his life, he sent this Benghazi weekly report. It expressed Libyans' growing frustration with police and security forces who were too weak to keep the country secure.
Okay, now all these calls for help went unanswered, right? So now we've got Hillary's, as Secretary of State, a major miscalculation. Okay, let's call it a miscalculation. Obama's malfeasance, he says, the worst mistake of my presidency, by Obama's own admission, was letting this state descend into terrorism and chaos and just become a failed state. Later on, when they started to investigate this, so help me, this is true, Hillary said, oh, when Christie, I can't believe this is a true story. Hillary said, oh, when Chris Stevens was begging us for security help, he was kidding. That hilarious Chris. That one thing we loved about Chris was his sense of humor. Just play this clip. This is clip number 13. This is Congresswoman Susan Brooks questioning Hillary. Why didn't you answer the call for help?
He emailed to a reporting officer who we know was in Benghazi still. He wrote, interesting, has security improved in Benghazi in recent weeks? Also curious what you guys decided to do regarding future of the compound. He was in Washington, D.C., or back in the States during that time. And in December, Ambassador Stevens, your soon-to-be ambassador, didn't know what was going to happen with the compound in Benghazi. How is that possible?
Well, Congresswoman, one of the great attributes that Chris Stevens had was a really good sense of humor. And I just see him smiling as he's typing this because it is clearly in response to the email down below talking about picking up a few, quote, fire sale items from the Brits.
Those fire sale items, by the way, fire sale items are barricades.
That's right.
They are additional requests for security for the compound. That's what that fire sale was, because we weren't providing enough physical security for the compound.
Funny old Chris, you know, Chris, he was always calling for help, and we would just laugh and laugh and laugh. I mean, the corruption and dishonesty it comes off her like a fog. She reminds me of Pigpen in the Peanuts cartoon. Always had that cloud of dust surrounding her. She just has a cloud of corruption surrounding her. And then the tragic, horrible Benghazi attack occurred. Okay, so then the attack occurs. Terrible, terrible attack. The compound is breached. The security guys, former Navy SEALs, are fighting courageously without any help, and nobody's sending any help. Now, obviously, we on the right made a lot of hay out of the fact that they didn't send help, and I'm not going to go into that. It's a separate scandal, that they weren't ready and they didn't send the help. But I don't think it was any kind of a plot or anything like that. It was just incompetence. It was an incompetent administration, and I don't know that for a fact. I just don't know the answers there, so I'm going to leave it. But the fact is, no help came. Our ambassador, first ambassador to be killed since 1979, was killed. One of the staffers, these two incredibly courageous security guys who were former Navy SEALs, were killed, and Stevens was apparently tortured, dragged out and tortured and killed. No one came, no help came. All right. So now, Obama has got this problem, right? Because Obama is running for re-election. This is in the lead up to his election campaign, and he has been making one campaign claim over and over and over again, which is that he is winning the war on terror, and Al-Qaeda, as he keeps saying over and over again, is decimated. Now, he didn't mean decimated. That means like 1 out of every 10 of them was killed. But he meant was they had been destroyed. Here's a quick montage, number 18.
There should be no doubt. Today, America is stronger, and Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat.
We've decimated Al-Qaeda's leadership.
Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat, and bin Laden is dead.
We've decimated Al-Qaeda Central. We have eliminated Osama bin Laden.
Al-Qaeda is much weaker than it was when I came into office.
Osama bin Laden is dead, and General Motors is alive.
The war in Afghanistan is coming to a close. Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat. Osama bin Laden is dead.
So that was the campaign rhetoric, all right? And he's running for re-election, and people didn't know. Remember, the polls were close. We were kind of hoping that Mitt Romney was doing better than he was, but still, the polls looked a lot closer than it turned out to be. And this is his claim, that he has been a good war president, when in fact the chickens of what he himself called his greatest mistake have come home to roost in Benghazi in a terrorist attack. So what does he do? There was a couple of days before in Cairo, there had been some unrest that apparently was sparked by some stupid video some guy had put out on YouTube. And so he uses this as an excuse. Now, the New York Times is reporting this is the cause, that this video is the cause of the Benghazi thing. Only at Fox News are they saying, wait a minute. That's not what happened. This is not what happened. But they're making, everybody on the left is making fun of Fox News. You remember, I'm sure, that during this campaign, Mitt Romney said to Obama, you didn't say it was a terrorist attack. Basically, you lied. You said it was this video. And Candy Crowley of CNN breaks into the debate to say, no, the president would never do such a thing as that. Listen to this.
Because it took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
He did call it an act of terror. It did as well take 2 weeks or so for the whole idea of there being a riot out there about this tape to come out. You're correct about that.
The administration indicated that this was a reaction to a video and was a spontaneous reaction.
They did.
It took them a long time to say this was a terrorist act by a terrorist group.
Okay, that's CNN. Have you seen CNN's new ad? Let's play CNN. Let's pause for just a minute here and play CNN's new ad.
This is an apple. Some people might try to tell you that it's a banana. They might scream banana, banana, banana over and over and over again. They might put banana in all caps. You might even start to believe that this is a banana. But it's not. This is an apple.
Yeah, okay, so there was CNN's Candy Crowley telling Mitt Romney that the apple was a banana. Let's take a look at the banana. Here's the Obama administration. That's the stupidest ad I ever saw. This is the Obama administration. Let's see their official claims, and this is Obama first, and then his aptly named spokesman, Jay Carney, number 10.
Since our founding, the United States has been a nation that respects all faiths. We reject all efforts to denigrate the religious beliefs of others. But there is absolutely no justification to this type of senseless violence. None. The world must stand together to unequivocally reject these brutal acts.
This is a fairly volatile situation, and it is in response not to United States policy, not to, obviously, the administration, not to the American people. It is in response to a video, a film, that we have judged to be reprehensible and disgusting. That in no way justifies any violent reaction to it. But this is not a case of protests directed at the United States writ large or at U.S. policy. This is in response to a video that is offensive.
All right, and here is Obama on the 18th of September, right? So that's 7 days later on the David Letterman show. This is the clearest statement that he made that I can find on the David Letterman show.
Here's what happened. You had a video that was released by somebody who lives here, sort of a shadowy character who is an extremely offensive video directed at Muhammad and Islam.
Making fun of the Prophet Muhammad.
Making fun of the Prophet Muhammad. And so this caused great offense in much of the Muslim world. But what also happened was extremists and terrorists used this as an excuse to attack a variety of our embassies, including the consulate in Libya.
Okay, so remember the real story. The real story is Hillary Clinton gave Obama bad advice. Obama took that advice to get rid of Gaddafi. After getting rid of Gaddafi, he did nothing to stop the state of the country of Libya from failing as a failed state and becoming a terrorist stronghold. Again and again, Chris Stevens called for help. No help was given. Called for more security. No security was given. This was a major, major failure of this administration during his campaign for re-election. So they lied and lied and lied. They sent Susan Rice, the ambassador to the UN, out on 5 different talk shows. She lied and lied and lied. But the worst was Hillary standing in front of the caskets of the dead and making this statement.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with. It is hard for the American people to make sense of that because it is senseless and it is totally unacceptable.
And I just want to mention that the video maker, a Coptic Christian named Nakula, who was kind of a kooky guy, put up a video and all this stuff about Muhammad and all this. He was arrested on parole violation. He's now, the last I heard from him, he was homeless. He's received death threats. I mean, they just destroyed this guy's life for putting up a video that had nothing to do with their failure, their malfeasance. So finally, let us answer. I mean, the most famous cut of all, of course, is that when Hillary was finally pressured, was finally put on the hot seat, was finally accused of the lie she had told and told and told, and this was her reaction.
And we were misled that there were supposedly protests and then something sprang out of that, an assault sprang out of that. And that was easily ascertained that that was not the fact. And the American people could have known that within days, and they didn't know that.
With all due respect, the fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
Here's the difference. Here's the difference. This was a major policy failure that was part of a major policy failure. It was a major policy failure that was part of a major failure of vision and ideas in the Obama administration connected to the fact that they could not bring themselves to admit that Islamism was a philosophy that grew out of this religion and had nothing to do with us, our bad acts, that this was not America's fault. I mean, this was a failure, and they lied and lied about it to get their guy reelected. It was a corrupt administration. This was a corrupt woman. Every time the news media says, boo-hoo-hoo, we got Donald Trump instead of Hillary Clinton, that's who he voted against. That's who Trump beat. He beat this woman who just lied and lied over the bodies of the dead, and Obama, too, was just as guilty as she was. He's a little bit better at hiding his fingerprints, but he's just the same. So what about Niger? What's happening in Niger? Niger is basically a stable state, although a lot of Gaddafi's weapons went into Niger as well as other places. Niger is not a terrorist hotbed right now, but there is terrorist activity there, Boko Haram, and we have guys in there. We have a fairly large number of guys in there. They don't drive around in armored vehicles, to answer Frederica Wilson's question, because nobody drives around there in armored. That's just an advertisement saying, please kill me. You know, they drive around in trucks. These are places with bad roads. What's her name? Rachel Maddow had some theory that because of Trump's travel ban, that some military pulled out of some place like 750 miles away from where these guys were killed. That's like a day and a half away. That was not help that was coming, like in Benghazi. This has nothing to do with it. Are there questions? Absolutely. There are open questions. Should we be there? Can we be there? All these things. Lindsey Graham said it best, though. Lindsey Graham was answering Chuck Todd, and this is cut number 3. Why we have guys all over the place, because as Chuck Todd says, we have now that finally Trump's guys have defeated ISIS, finally have annihilated ISIS by changing their strategy. Now all these guys are going off into the various countries and we're chasing them down. And this is Lindsey Graham telling it like it is.
It's a generational struggle. If you don't think it's a generational struggle, you don't understand the war. If you think it's limited to the Mideast, you don't understand the theology. It is spreading throughout the world, particularly Africa. And if you think it's going to be done in a short period of time, or if you take off means of how you fight this war, if there's an authorization to use force tomorrow that limited the war based on time, geography, and means, I would vote against it, because the war is now morphing. It's going to places that we haven't heard of before, to the American people. We're going to follow the terrorists wherever they go. We're going to use whatever means we need to with partners to destroy them, and whatever time it takes, it takes. And most people are not ready for that, but I am.
So basically, because Trump and Mattis have deprived the Islamic State of the Islamic State that they had set up, because they have chased them out, and now they're basically operating out of a trench. Because of that, these terrorists are spreading all over the world. We knew this was going to happen. This is not a state we're fighting. It's an ideology. We're going to have to kill them where they go. This has nothing to do with Benghazi. Benghazi is about the fact that Obama blew the Arab Spring and Hillary Clinton helped him cover it up so he would get reelected. That's what Benghazi is about. When you have a scandal like that, bring it to me and I'll admit it's Trump's Benghazi. Until then, all you've got is 4 heroes dead and a press that has lost its ever-loving mind.